Why does everyone hate the engagement ring I chose? I stared at the text message for the fifth time, my coffee growing cold as Sarah's words burned into my retinas. I can't wear this in public, Mike. It's embarrassing. My friends are going to think you got it from a pawn shop. The ring, **ring, sat in its velvet box on my kitchen table like evidence of my spectacular failure as a fiancé. 3 months of research, 6 different antique shops, and $4,200 of my hard-earned savings had gone into finding what I genuinely believed was perfect for her. The 1920s Art Deco piece featured a stunning emerald-cut sapphire surrounded by intricate platinum filigree work and tiny diamonds. It was elegant, unique, and screamed Sarah's name to me, the woman who dragged me to estate sales every weekend and had a vintage brooch collection spanning 3 decades. But you love antique jewelry, I'd said when she first tried it on 2 days ago, her face falling faster than my stomach. Remember that Art Deco exhibit at the museum? You spent 2 hours talking about the craftsmanship. That's different, Mike. That's for looking at, not wearing. This is supposed to be my engagement ring. She'd held up her hand, examining the sapphire like it had personally offended her. Where's the big diamond? Where's the sparkle that catches light from across the room? Now her mother was texting me too. Linda, who I'd always gotten along with, had apparently done a complete personality transplant. Michael, I'm concerned about your commitment level here. Sarah's father spent $15,000 on my engagement ring in 1987. Adjusted for inflation, that's nearly $40,000 today. What message are you sending our daughter? What message was I sending? That I listened to her interests. That I valued craftsmanship over carrots. That I'd rather spend months finding something meaningful than walking into Jared's and pointing at the biggest rock in my price range. My phone buzzed again. Sarah's best friend Jessica, dude, seriously. Emma just got engaged and her ring is gorgeous. Classic solitaire, 2 carats, the works. Sarah's sitting here crying because she's embarrassed to even show people what you got her. I set the phone down and picked up the ring box, opening it one more time. The sapphire caught the morning light streaming through my window, the platinum setting showcasing the incredible detail work that had been lovingly crafted nearly a century ago. The jeweler had called it museum quality and explained how pieces like this were becoming increasingly rare. The center stone was flawless, the side diamonds perfectly matched, and the provenance traced back to a wealthy Boston family. But apparently, none of that mattered. Sarah wanted me to return it. She'd already picked out a replacement online, a traditional round solitaire that cost $12,800. It's classic, she'd explained, showing me the listing on her phone. Timeless. This is what people expect to see. $12,800. Nearly 3 times what I'd spent, and definitely 3 times more than I had. She'd suggested I could finance it or maybe ask my parents for help. It's an investment in our future, Mike. In how people see us as a couple. I closed the ring box with a sharp snap. How people see us. There it was, the truth she'd finally said out loud. The breaking point came that evening when Sarah showed up at my apartment with reinforcements. Her sister Emma, the one with the supposedly gorgeous ring, and her mother flanked her like some kind of intervention squad. We need to talk, Sarah announced, settling onto my couch like she was preparing for negotiations. Emma positioned herself by the window, her own 2-carat solitaire catching the light in what I was starting to realize was a very deliberate move. Mike, we're not trying to hurt your feelings, Linda began, her voice taking on that patronizing tone people use when they're absolutely about to destroy your feelings. But this is about more than just a ring. This is about Sarah's happiness, her confidence, and frankly, what this says about your priorities. I stayed standing, arms crossed. What does it say about my priorities? That you put your own taste above what she actually wants, Emma chimed in, wiggling her fingers so her diamond cast little rainbows on the wall. When David proposed, he asked my friends what I'd been looking at. He did research on what I actually liked, not what he thought I should like. The irony was suffocating. I did do research. 3 months of it. Sarah's Pinterest board has 57 vintage jewelry pins. She has a whole board called Art Deco Dreams. She literally has a photo of a sapphire ring from the 1920s with the caption, Goals. Sarah's face flushed. That was just aesthetic inspiration. For looking at pretty things. I never said I wanted to actually wear something like that every day for the rest of my life. So when you spent 2 hours at Blackwell Antiques last month telling me how mass-produced modern jewelry has no soul, that was just. God, Mike, you're being so literal about everything. She threw her hands up. Can't you just admit you made a mistake and fix it? This doesn't have to be some huge thing where you dig your heels in and make everyone miserable. Linda leaned forward. We found a solution. Thornton Jewelers has a lovely selection, and they offer 12-month payment plans. Sarah picked out something absolutely perfect. It's classic, appropriate, and honestly much more suitable for a young professional woman. $12,800, I said flatly. It's an investment, Emma added helpfully. David always says you can't put a price on love. Funny, because you all seem to think $4,200 isn't enough love, but $12,800 is exactly the right amount. The room went quiet. Sarah stared at me. Wait. You spent over $4,000. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You thought I bought you a $4 ring from a vending machine? Jesus, Sarah. I spent months finding that piece. The sapphire is Salon, certified conflict-free, and nearly flawless. The platinum setting is handcrafted with mill-grain work that they don't even do anymore. The provenance goes back to 1923, and the jeweler said comparable pieces sell at Sotheby's for $6,000 to $8,000. Linda's mouth had fallen open slightly. Emma stopped playing with her ring. You never told me it cost that much, Sarah said quietly. Because I didn't think the price tag was what mattered to you. I thought what mattered was that I listened to what you loved and found something that honored that. I thought you'd see the craftsmanship and the history and the fact that I chose something as unique as you are. Sarah was staring at her hands. But, it still doesn't look like an engagement ring. And there it was. After everything, the research, the money, the sentiment, the revelation that I hadn't bought her jewelry from a gumball machine, it still came down to meeting other people's expectations. I walked to the kitchen and picked up the ring box. You're right, I said, coming back into the living room. It doesn't look like an engagement ring. I looked at each of them, these three women who had somehow made me feel like a failure for choosing thoughtfulness over tradition. It looks like a mistake. The silence stretched until Emma finally broke it. Mike, you don't have to be so dramatic about this. Sarah's not asking you to return a family heirloom or something. Just exchange it for what she actually wants. What she actually wants, I repeated slowly, is for me to go into debt so she can have a ring that looks like everyone else's. It's not about going into debt, Linda interjected. It's about making smart financial choices. You could do a payment plan, or ask my parents for money. Right, you mentioned that. I turned to Sarah. Did you know my dad just got laid off last month? That my mom's been picking up extra shifts at the hospital to cover their mortgage. But sure, let me ask them to drop 8 grand so your coworkers don't think I'm cheap. Sarah's face went pale. I didn't know about your dad. Because you never asked. You just assumed my family could bankroll your jewelry fantasies like Emma's can. I gestured toward her sister. Not all of us have daddies who can drop 40,000 on a ring without blinking. That's not fair, Emma snapped. David worked hard for that ring. He saved for months. David works at his father's law firm making 6 figures straight out of college. I'm a graphic designer at a nonprofit. We're not playing in the same league here. The truth was hitting harder than I'd expected. 3 days ago, I'd been excited to marry this woman. Now I was doing math on our fundamental incompatibility while her mother sat on my couch calculating payment plans for my romantic gestures. Sarah finally looked up at me. So what are you saying? That you can't afford to make me happy? The question hit like a slap. I'm saying I thought I already had made you happy. I thought the woman who spent 3 hours at that estate sale in Cambridge explaining the difference between Edwardian and Art Deco settings would appreciate a museum-quality piece from 1923. I thought my girlfriend who calls modern chain stores soulless would value craftsmanship over carrots. But people don't know any of that just by looking at it, Sarah said, her voice getting smaller. When Jessica got engaged, everyone immediately knew David loved her because of how impressive her ring was. When I show mine, people just look confused. People like who? Specifically, who are these people whose opinions matter more than mine? Emma jumped in. Everyone, Mike. Co-workers, friends, family. An engagement ring makes a statement about the relationship. About how much the man values his future wife. I stared at her, this woman who'd known me for 3 years, who'd been to my apartment for dozens of dinner parties, who'd seen me drive Sarah to the emergency room when she had food poisoning and stay with her all night. And you think the statement I'm making is that I don't value her? I think the statement you're making is that your artistic vision matters more than Sarah's feelings, Linda said crisply. A real partner would prioritize their fiancé's happiness over being right. That's when something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted, like a tectonic plate finding a new position. You're absolutely right, Linda. I opened the ring box one last time, looking at the sapphire that had represented forever just 72 hours ago. A real partner would prioritize their fiancé's happiness. And a real fiancé would prioritize her partner's thoughtfulness over other people's opinions. I closed the box and slipped it into my pocket. Sarah, I'm going to return this ring tomorrow. You're right, it doesn't look like an engagement ring. And honestly, after this conversation, I'm not sure I look like husband material either. At least not for someone who measures love in carrots and payment plans. The color drained from Sarah's face. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we should think about whether we want the same things out of life. The three of them erupted at once. Mike, you're being ridiculous. Sarah shot up from the couch, her voice cracking. We can work this out. You can't break up with her over a ring, Emma added, her own voice rising an octave. That's insane. But Linda surprised me. She stayed seated, watching me with calculating eyes. Sarah, honey, maybe you should hear him out. Let him explain what he means. I almost laughed. Even now, she was strategizing. Probably figuring out how to spin this so I'd be the villain who broke her daughter's heart over jewelry. What I mean, I said, looking directly at Sarah, is that we've been together for 2.5 years, and apparently I don't know you at all. The woman I thought I was proposing to would have seen that ring and understood the thought behind it. She might have had questions about the style choice, sure, but she wouldn't have hidden it from her friends like it was something shameful. Sarah's eyes were filling with tears. I do understand the thought. But understanding doesn't mean I have to love wearing something that makes me self-conscious every single day. Self-conscious because it's not what other people expect to see. Yes. So what? Is that such a crime? I'm 24 years old, Mike. This is supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life, and instead I'm dreading showing my hand to anyone because I know they're going to have questions I can't answer. Questions like what? Emma answered for her. Like whether you're serious about the relationship. Like whether you actually understand Sarah's taste. Like whether, she paused, seeming to realize she was about to cross a line. Go ahead, I said. Say it. Like whether you can actually afford to take care of her long term. There it was. The real issue, finally out in the open. Ah. I nodded slowly. So this isn't about the ring style at all. This is about the statement my budget makes about my earning potential. That's not, Sarah started. No, Emma's right. Let's be honest here. David can drop 13 grand on a ring because he's going to be making partner at daddy's firm by 30. I spent 4,000 because that's what 3 months of overtime at a nonprofit gets you. And apparently, that's not going to cut it for the lifestyle you're envisioning. Linda finally spoke up. Michael, that's a very cynical way to look at. Is it wrong, though? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning the screen toward them. Here's my checking account. After the ring, I've got $347 until my next paycheck on Friday. My savings account has been wiped out. I was going to surprise Sarah with a weekend in Vermont for our engagement celebration, but that's obviously off the table now since I need to start saving for the real ring. Sarah was staring at my phone screen, her face going from pale to gray. Mike, I didn't know it cleaned out your savings. Why would you? You never asked about my finances. Just like you never asked about my dad's job situation, or why I've been eating ramen for lunch every day this month, or why I suggested we postpone looking at apartments together until summer. The silence was deafening. Emma had stopped fidgeting with her ring. Linda was studying her manicure like it held the secrets of the universe. But here's the thing, I continued, my voice getting steadier as the adrenaline kicked in. I was happy to eat ramen. I was excited to surprise you with something I knew you'd love. I thought I was investing in our future, the real one, where we're partners who understand each other, not performers in some social media highlight reel. Sarah sank back onto the couch. That's not fair. I'm not asking you to perform anything. No. Then explain to me how people don't know David loves Jessica just by looking at her ring isn't asking me to perform wealth I don't have for an audience I don't care about. I said people know David loves Emma, not Jessica, she corrected quietly. Jesus, Sarah. That's what you're focusing on right now. She looked up at me then, really looked at me, and for a second I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with, the one who cried at vintage jewelry exhibits and spent Saturday mornings hunting through estate sale treasures. But then her gaze shifted to Emma's ring catching the lamplight, and I watched her slip away again. I just want to feel proud when I show people. Is that really so terrible? And that's when I knew we were done. Proud of what, exactly? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Proud of the ring, or proud of me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. No sound came out. Because here's what I'm realizing, I continued, pulling out my phone again. You posted about Jessica's engagement on Instagram within 2 hours of seeing her ring. 47 likes, 16 comments about how stunning and perfect it was. But you've been engaged for 3 days, Sarah. 3 days, and you haven't told anyone except the people in this room. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Mike, social media isn't everything. You're right. It's not everything. But it's a pretty good barometer of what someone's excited to share with the world. I scrolled through Sarah's Instagram, the evidence mounting with each swipe. Here's Emma's engagement announcement from last month. Here's your coworker Melissa's from February. Your college roommate Kate's from Christmas. All posted within hours, all with captions about being the luckiest girl alive. Sarah's face was burning red now. I was waiting for the right moment. The right moment, or the right ring. Linda stood up abruptly. Michael, this is enough. You're embarrassing her. I'm embarrassing her. I laughed, and it came out sharper than I intended. Linda, your daughter is embarrassed to tell her friends she's engaged to me. She's so mortified by the ring I chose that she's hidden our engagement like it's something shameful. But somehow I'm the one doing the embarrassing here. You're being cruel, Emma said quietly. Sarah loves you. She just wants. She wants what you have. What Jessica has. What every other woman on her Instagram feed has. I turned back to Sarah, who was staring at her hands like she could make herself disappear. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you've spent the last 3 days excited about marrying me instead of figuring out how to explain away your ring. The silence stretched so long I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Finally, Sarah looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I did call my mom right after you proposed, she whispered. I was so happy, Mike. I was crying and laughing and I couldn't wait to tell her everything. But then she asked about the ring, and I tried to describe it, and she asked if it was a family stone, and I said no, and she asked how many carats, and I didn't know, and then she asked if you'd gone to Tiffany or. And that's when it started, I finished. The doubt. The comparisons. The measuring. She nodded miserably. Mom got so quiet on the phone. She asked if I was sure you were serious about the relationship. She said Dad would want to have a conversation with you about expectations and financial responsibility. And then I started looking at the ring differently, and you decided I wasn't serious about you because I bought you sapphires instead of diamonds. That's not, but she stopped, because we both knew that's exactly what had happened. Linda cleared her throat. Michael, you have to understand, we're just looking out for Sarah's best interests. When my husband proposed, it was a statement about our future. About his commitment to providing for. Providing for what? Sarah makes $60,000 a year at the marketing firm. I make $42,000 at the nonprofit. Combined, we're doing fine. We're not exactly struggling artists here. But you could be doing better, Emma interjected. David's firm is always looking for designers. Corporate clients pay way more than nonprofits. You could probably double your salary. I stared at her. So now you want me to change careers too? We want you to consider Sarah's future, Linda said firmly. Her happiness. Her security. Her image, I corrected. Let's be honest about what we're really talking about here. The conversation was spiraling, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. 3 days of frustration and hurt were pouring out like a broken dam. You know what the really fucked up part is? I said, pacing now because standing still felt impossible. I actually considered it. After Sarah's first reaction, I went back to Blackwell Antiques and asked Marcus, the owner, about returning it. You know what he told me? They all stared at me, waiting. He said in 30 years of selling vintage jewelry, he'd only had 3 people return pieces like this. 2 were because of family deaths, and 1 was because the woman's friends told her it looked weird. He said he always felt sad for those customers because they were usually giving up something extraordinary for something ordinary. Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. But here's the kicker, I continued, pulling up my text messages. I was so desperate to make you happy that I actually went to Thornton Jewelers yesterday. I looked at that $12,000 ring you picked out. Classic solitaire, 2 carats, everything you wanted. Emma perked up slightly. And I asked about financing options. The sales guy, his name was Brad, real winner, looked at my credit report and offered me a payment plan. 24 months at 8.9% interest. Total cost would be about $15,000 by the time it's paid off. Linda was nodding approvingly. That's very reasonable for a ring of that quality. Linda, that's my entire take-home pay for 4 months. After taxes, rent, car payment, student loans, and basic living expenses, I'd have about $30 left each month for 2 years. $30 for gas, groceries, everything else. The nodding stopped. But wait, it gets better, I said, my voice getting louder despite my attempts to stay calm. Good old Brad suggested I could get a cosigner to qualify for better terms. Maybe a parent or relative with stronger credit. He actually handed me a business card for a financial planning service that specializes in helping young couples make smart investment decisions about their futures. Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Mike, I never asked you to go into debt. You didn't have to ask. That's what makes this so fucking heartbreaking, Sarah. I was ready to do it. I was ready to eat beans and rice for 2 years so you could have a ring that would get the right reactions at brunch with your friends. Emma looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Mike, we had no idea your financial situation was so. So what? So realistic. So middle class. I laughed bitterly. Sorry, I'm not David with his trust fund and guaranteed partnership track. Sorry, I chose passion over profit when I decided to work for an organization that actually helps people instead of shuffling corporate paperwork. That's not what I meant, Emma protested. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you all decided I'm not good enough for Sarah the moment you saw a ring that didn't scream expensive from across a crowded restaurant. Linda stood up, her patience clearly exhausted. Michael, you're being deliberately obtuse. This isn't about money, it's about effort. It's about showing Sarah that she's worth your best effort. My best effort. I repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitterness. 3 months of research isn't effort. Spending my entire savings isn't effort. Finding a one-of-a-kind piece that perfectly matches her interests isn't effort. But walking into a chain store and financing the biggest rock I can barely afford, that's effort. It's the right kind of effort, Linda said crisply. It's effort that considers what Sarah actually wants instead of what you think she should want. And what Sarah actually wants is to impress people she barely knows with jewelry she can't afford. That's when Sarah finally exploded. Stop it, she screamed, jumping to her feet. Stop making me sound like some shallow gold digger. I'm not asking for a $20,000 ring. I just want something that feels like what? Like forever, she sobbed. Like something I can wear for 50 years and still feel proud of. Like something that says, yes, this man loves me enough to give me the best he can. The room went dead silent except for her crying. But I did give you the best I can, Sarah. That ring was literally the best I could do. She looked up at me through her tears, mascara smudged and nose running. Then maybe that's the problem. Sarah's words hung in the air like a death sentence. The problem wasn't the ring. The problem was me. I felt something cold settle in my chest, like ice water replacing blood. So we're finally being honest. That's not what I meant, she said quickly, but her eyes were already darting away, looking for escape routes. No, I think it's exactly what you meant. I sat down heavily in my armchair, suddenly exhausted. The problem is that my best isn't good enough for the life you want. Linda moved closer to Sarah, maternal instincts kicking in. Michael, you're twisting her words. Am I? Because it sounds like Sarah just told me that my financial limitations are incompatible with her expectations. I looked at each of them. And honestly, maybe she's right. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Mike, you're both upset. Maybe you should take a break, Anne. Take a break from what? From reality? I pulled out my phone again, opening the calculator app. Let's do some math, since everyone's so concerned about financial responsibility. I started typing numbers. My salary, $42,000. After taxes, about $32,000 take home. Monthly expenses, $1,200 for rent, $350 for my car, $200 for student loans, another $350 for utilities, insurance, groceries, gas. That leaves me with roughly $800 a month for everything else. Sarah had stopped crying, watching me with growing horror. Now, let's add Sarah's dream ring. Payment plan at Thornton's, $625 monthly for 24 months. That leaves me with $175 a month for entertainment, emergencies, dates, gifts, savings, everything. I looked up at Sarah. But wait, we haven't talked about the wedding yet. Emma, how much did your wedding cost? Emma went pale. That's different. Our families helped. Ballpark figure. 30,000. 40. 38, she whispered. 38,000. I typed more numbers. Even if we split that with your family, which based on your dad's ring philosophy, probably won't happen, we're looking at what, 15 to 20,000 from my side. At my current savings rate of maybe $50 a month after ring payments, that's only, let me see, 300 years. The silence was deafening. But I'm being dramatic, right? I continued, my voice getting eerily calm. Let me check real estate prices in Sarah's neighborhood. Brookline, right? Where you want to live after we're married? I pulled up Zillow. 2-bedroom condo starting at $550,000. With a 10% down payment, $55,000, and current mortgage rates, we're looking at monthly payments around $3,500. Sarah's face was white as paper. My entire monthly income wouldn't even cover the mortgage, let alone food, utilities, or that BMW you've been eyeing. So clearly, the solution is for me to get a better job. Corporate design work, like Emma suggested. Linda was nodding eagerly. Exactly. You're talented, Michael. You could. I could sell my soul designing advertisements for pharmaceutical companies instead of creating educational materials for literacy programs. I set my phone down. I could spend my days making rich people richer instead of helping kids learn to read. You're being melodramatic, Emma said. Lots of corporate designers do meaningful work. Name one. David Designs. David inherited his position and makes partner track money because daddy owns the firm. That's not the same as meaningful work. Sarah finally found her voice. You act like making more money is some kind of moral failing. Like wanting security is shallow. Security. Or status. They're the same thing, she exploded. You think I'm being materialistic, but I'm thinking about our future. About having kids someday. About not worrying every month whether we can afford rent. We can afford rent, Sarah. We just can't afford Brookline rent. We can't afford BMW payments and designer handbags and weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard. So what, we're supposed to live in some cramped apartment in Somerville forever? Shop at Target instead of Nordstrom? Drive 10-year-old cars? I stared at her. Is that really so terrible? It's not terrible, it's just limiting. She was crying again, but quietly now. I want more, Mike. I want nice things. I want to not have to check my bank balance before going out to dinner. I want to be able to help my kids with college without taking out loans. And I want to do work that matters. I want to come home feeling like I made a difference instead of just made money. Linda stepped in. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, Michael. Plenty of people find fulfilling careers that also pay well. Like what? Give me one example of someone who left non-profit work for corporate design and didn't become miserable. She opened her mouth, then closed it. That's what I thought. I stood up, suddenly clear about what needed to happen. Sarah, we want different lives. That's not anyone's fault, but it's not fixable either. Don't say that, she whispered. We can compromise. How? You compromise by accepting a smaller ring and I compromise by changing careers. You compromise by living in a cheaper apartment and I compromise by spending my days creating marketing materials for companies I despise. Emma tried again. Relationships require sacrifice. They require compatible sacrifices. Sarah's sacrificing lifestyle expectations. I'm sacrificing my entire identity. The room went quiet except for the clock ticking on my mantle. Sarah was staring at me like I was a stranger. So what happens now, she asked finally. I walked to the kitchen and picked up the ring box one last time, feeling its weight. $4,200. 3 months of research. A lifetime of disappointment. Now I return this, get my money back, and we figure out how to untangle 2.5 years. Mike, she started. I'm done, Sarah. I'm done being made to feel inadequate for living within my means. I'm done apologizing for choosing passion over profit. And I'm done pretending we want the same future. The ice water in my chest was spreading, numbing everything it touched. This isn't just about a ring. It never was. The three of them sat in stunned silence as my words sank in. Sarah's face cycled through emotions, shock, hurt, anger, and something that might have been relief. Emma kept glancing between her sister and me like she was watching a tennis match, while Linda's expression had shifted into full damage control mode. Michael, Linda said carefully, you're making a permanent decision based on temporary emotions. Why don't you both take some time to cool down? Cool down. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Linda, this isn't a fight about leaving dishes in the sink. Your daughter just told me that my best isn't good enough for her. That my career choices are limiting. That my financial reality is incompatible with her dreams. Sarah flinched. That's not what I said. Then what did you say? Because from where I'm standing, you just explained that you want a life I can't afford and a partner who prioritizes money over meaning. My phone buzzed with a text. Without thinking, I glanced at it. My buddy Jake from college, dude, saw Sarah's Instagram story. That ring is sick. When's the engagement party? I stared at the message, confused. Sarah, what Instagram story? Her face went crimson. It was just. I opened Instagram and navigated to her profile. There it was, posted 27 minutes ago, a carefully angled photo of her hand wearing the sapphire ring, but shot in dim lighting that made the details impossible to see. The caption read, he said yes. Ring sparkles #engaged #vintage #unique. But here's what made my blood boil, she'd used a filter that added extra sparkle effects and cranked up the brightness until the sapphire looked almost white. Unless you looked carefully, it could easily pass for a diamond. Vintage. Unique. I read the hashtags aloud. Interesting choice of words for a ring you've spent 3 days calling embarrassing. Emma leaned over to look at my phone. Oh. You posted it. With a filter that makes it look completely different than it actually is, I continued, scrolling through the 17 comments that had already accumulated. Gorgeous. So pretty. Love the vintage style. Funny how your friends think it's beautiful when they can't actually see what it looks like. Sarah was practically hyperventilating. The lighting in your apartment is terrible for photos. The lighting is fine, Sarah. You filtered it because you were ashamed of posting the real thing. Linda stood up abruptly. I think we should all calm down. No, this is perfect, I interrupted, my voice getting louder. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's so desperate for the right reaction that she posted a fake version of the ring. She got her engagement announcement and her Instagram likes, but only by lying about what I actually gave her. Sarah was crying again, but I was past caring. Look at these comments, Sarah. Can't wait to see it in person. We need to grab coffee so you can show me everything. What happens when Jessica wants to see the ring that looked so sparkly online? I'll tell them it photographs weird. You'll tell them more lies to cover up the original lie. I started pacing again, adrenaline surging through my system. Do you realize how fucked up this is? You're engaged, you should be happy, but instead you're creating elaborate deceptions to manage other people's expectations about your jewelry. Emma tried to intervene. Mike, social media isn't real life. Then why does it matter more than real life? Why is Sarah more concerned about her Instagram comments than her fiancé's feelings? That hit home. Sarah looked up through her tears, and for a moment I saw genuine shame in her eyes. I just wanted people to be excited for us, she whispered. They are excited. Look at these comments, people are thrilled for you. But that's not enough, is it? Because you know the excitement is based on a lie. I scrolled through more responses. Here's Jessica, OMG finally. I knew he was going to propose soon. Here's your cousin Amy, about time. You two are perfect together. These people are celebrating our engagement, Sarah. Our relationship. Our love. But all you can focus on is whether they're impressed enough by my net worth. Linda finally lost her patience. That's enough, Michael. You're being cruel to a young woman who just wants to feel proud of her engagement. Proud of what? The fake version she posted online, or the real version sitting in my kitchen? Proud of you. Sarah suddenly screamed, her voice cracking. I want to be proud of you. I want to show off what you gave me without having to explain or justify or make excuses. The apartment went dead silent. There it is, I said quietly. The truth we've been dancing around for 3 days. Sarah's shoulders were shaking as she sobbed. I love you, Mike. I love your passion and your values and your kindness. But I hate that loving you means giving up things I want. I hate that being with you means accepting good enough forever. The ice water in my chest crystallized into something sharp and final. Then you don't love me, Sarah. You love an edited version of me, the one where I have David's bank account and your father's priorities. The words hung between us like a blade. Sarah's face crumpled as if I'd physically struck her, and even Emma looked genuinely shocked by the rawness of what I just said. That's not true, Sarah whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Isn't it? You love me enough to want to marry me, but not enough to wear the ring I chose. You love my values, but want me to abandon them for a bigger paycheck. You love my thoughtfulness, except when it doesn't match your Instagram aesthetic. My phone buzzed again. Another comment on her post, this time from David. Congrats, man. Sarah's ring is stunning. Can't wait to celebrate with you both. Drinks at Beacon Hill Wine Bar this weekend. I showed Sarah the message. Beacon Hill Wine Bar. $30 cocktails. David's treating, I assume. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. We don't have to go. But you want to. You want to sit in that overpriced bar and let David congratulate us while you show off a ring you're ashamed of. You want to smile and nod when Emma talks about wedding planning and venue shopping, knowing we can't afford the kind of wedding you actually want. Linda was watching this exchange with calculating eyes. Michael, every couple has financial discussions. It's normal to want. It's normal to want financial security, Linda. It's not normal to demand your partner transform their entire life to fund your aspirations. I turned back to Sarah. Tell me something. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, would you keep the ring? The question came out harsher than I'd intended, but I needed to know. Sarah stared at me. What kind of question is that? A simple one. If something happened to me, would you wear that sapphire for the rest of your life thinking about how much I loved you? Or would you quietly have it reset into a pendant and buy yourself the solitaire you actually wanted? The silence stretched so long I could hear my upstairs neighbor's television through the ceiling. I don't know, she finally admitted. Emma looked horrified. Sarah, of course you'd keep it. Would you keep David's ring if it were a sapphire? I asked her directly. Emma's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. That's different, Linda interjected quickly. David chose something appropriate. David chose something expensive. There's a difference. I pulled up David's Instagram post from Emma's engagement last month, scrolling to find his caption. 2 months' salary was worth every penny to see that smile. Hashtag word hit, hashtag forever, hashtag Shasades. I looked up at them. 2 months' salary. David makes about $16,000 a month, which means he spent roughly $32,000 on Emma's ring. That's more than my entire annual take-home pay. Emma's face went white. She clearly hadn't realized I could do that math. But here's what's really interesting about David's post, I continued, my voice getting steadier as the pieces clicked together. He's bragging about the sacrifice. 2 months' salary sounds impressive until you realize he'll make that back by Memorial Day. But when I sacrifice 3 months of savings plus overtime, somehow that's not romantic enough. Sarah's phone started buzzing with notifications. Her Instagram post was gaining momentum, 23 comments now, 46 likes. I watched her eyes flick to the screen involuntarily, even in the middle of our relationship imploding. Go ahead, I said. Check them. I know you want to. She shook her head, but her fingers were already moving. Sarah, you have to tell me everything, she read aloud, her voice barely audible. The ring is so unique, where did he propose? I'm dying to hear the whole story. You're the luckiest girl ever. Each comment seemed to make her shrink smaller. 26 people telling you how lucky and loved you are, I observed. But it doesn't feel true, does it? Because they're reacting to the filtered version. Sarah's thumb hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. You know what the saddest part is? I said quietly. Those comments are right. You are lucky, and you are loved. Just not in the way you want it to be. The notification sound kept pinging as more people discovered Sarah's post. Each chime felt like a tiny hammer blow, marking time until this whole charade collapsed under its own weight. 31 comments now, I said, watching her phone light up repeatedly on the coffee table. Your cousin Jenny wants to plan an engagement party. Your college roommate Michelle is asking for wedding date details. They're all so excited to celebrate something you're not even sure you want. Sarah's mascara had created dark tracks down her cheeks. She looked exhausted, like someone who'd been holding up a heavy mask for too long. I do want it. I want to marry you. You want to marry the version of me that can afford your dreams. Emma finally spoke up, her voice small. Mike, maybe we pushed too hard about the ring. If you love each other. Love isn't enough, Emma. The words tasted bitter. That's the lesson here. Sarah loves me, but she loves the idea of financial security more. And honestly, I don't blame her for that choice. Linda leaned forward. Michael, you're being very black and white about this. Couples compromise. What compromise are you suggesting, Linda? That Sarah lower her standards, or that I raise my income? I gestured toward the Instagram notification still pinging away. Because one of those is a choice, and the other is a demand. My phone rang. Jake's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Sarah said suddenly. Tell him the truth. I stared at her, then at the phone. Jake had been my best man at my brother's wedding last year. We'd been roommates junior year when he was dating a girl who dumped him for someone with better prospects, her exact words. He'd understand this situation better than anyone. I answered. Hey Jake. Dude. Finally. I've been waiting for this call since Sarah posted. Tell me everything, where'd you propose? How long were you planning it? That ring is fucking gorgeous, by the way. The irony was suffocating. Thanks, man. It's complicated. Complicated how? Cold feet. Because that's totally normal. Jake, can I ask you something? Remember Melissa? Your ex from junior year. There was a pause. Yeah, why? If she'd said yes to your proposal, but complained that the ring wasn't expensive enough, what would you have done? The silence stretched longer. Emma was watching me with growing alarm, clearly realizing this conversation was about to become very public. Mike, is everything okay? Sarah's right there, isn't she? Answer the question. Jake's voice got serious. I would have told her to fuck off. A woman who cares more about the price tag than the gesture doesn't deserve either. But why are you, oh shit. Oh shit, Mike. Yeah. The ring Sarah posted, she's complaining about it. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. This was the moment of truth. I could protect her dignity, keep this private, let her save face with our mutual friends. Or I could let Jake draw his own conclusions. The ring in the photo isn't exactly what it looks like in person, I said carefully. What do you mean? Sarah was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, please, at me. She used a filter, Jake. Made it look more traditional than it actually is. Jesus Christ. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. She's embarrassed by the ring you bought her. Emma shot up from the couch. Mike, don't. Her family thinks I should return it and finance something more appropriate. Something that makes the right statement about my earning potential. The silence on Jake's end was deafening. Finally, how much did you spend, man? 4,200. 42, and that's not enough. Apparently not. Sarah buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. The Instagram notifications had stopped, probably because she'd finally turned off her phone, but the damage was spreading in real time through our social circle. Mike, Jake said slowly, please tell me you're not actually considering financing a bigger ring. I looked around the room, at Linda calculating damage control, at Emma frantically texting someone, probably David, at Sarah disappearing into herself with shame and regret. No, I said quietly. I'm considering returning this one and walking away entirely. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic, but I was already committed to this path. Good, Jake said firmly. You deserve better than that bullshit, brother. Way better. The line went quiet after Jake hung up, but the silence felt different now, heavier, more final. Sarah was staring at me like I just detonated a bomb in the middle of our living room, which I guess I had. You told him, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You actually told him everything. He asked a direct question. Emma was typing furiously on her phone, probably damage control messages to David and anyone else in our circle who might have heard Jake's side of the conversation. Linda had gone into full crisis management mode, her real estate agent instincts kicking in. Michael, Linda said carefully, Jake is going to tell people. You realize that, don't you? I shrugged. People were going to find out anyway. Better they hear the truth from me than spend the next week trying to figure out why Sarah's ring looks different in person than it did online. Sarah's phone lit up with an incoming call, Jessica's name flashing on the screen. She stared at it like it was a live grenade. Answer it, I said. Tell her about the filter. Mike, please. Answer it, or I will. Her hands shaking, Sarah swiped to accept the call. Hey Jess. Even from across the room, I could hear Jessica's excited voice. Oh my god, finally. I've been refreshing Instagram waiting for details. That ring is absolutely gorgeous, so unique. When can I see it in person? Are you free for drinks tomorrow? Sarah's eyes met mine, desperation clear in her expression. Actually, Jess, now's not a great time. Just for like 2 minutes. I'm dying to know everything. Where did Mike find that ring? It looked almost vintage in the photo, but the sparkle was insane. I walked over and held out my hand for the phone. Sarah shook her head frantically. Sarah, I said quietly, give me the phone. Mike, don't. I took the phone gently but firmly. Hey Jessica, it's Mike. Mike. Oh my god, congratulations. I was just telling Sarah how stunning that ring is. You have amazing taste, where did you find it? Blackwell Antiques on Newberry Street. It's a 1923 Art Deco piece with a salon sapphire and platinum setting. Cost me $4,200 and 3 months of research. The silence on Jessica's end stretched uncomfortably long. Oh. It's a sapphire. Deep blue salon sapphire, yeah. The photo Sarah posted used a brightening filter that made it look white, but it's definitely blue. Wow. That's so unique. Emma was making frantic cutting motions across her throat, but I was past caring about social niceties. Yeah, I thought Sarah would love it since she's always talking about vintage jewelry and how modern rings have no character. But apparently I was wrong about what she actually wanted. Another long pause. Is everything okay? You sound kind of. Jessica, can I ask you something? If David had proposed with a sapphire instead of a diamond, how would you have reacted? That's a weird question, Mike. Humor me. I could hear her breathing, probably looking around for an escape route from this increasingly uncomfortable conversation. I guess. I mean, I'd love anything David chose, but I've always dreamed of a diamond, you know. Like, since I was little. That's just what engagement rings are supposed to be. Right. And if David had spent 3 months researching vintage sapphires because he thought they matched your personality better? Mike, what's going on? Is Sarah okay? I looked at Sarah, who was crying silently while Emma rubbed her back and whispered reassurances. Linda was on her own phone now, probably calling Sarah's father with an emergency family meeting request. Sarah's fine, Jessica. We're just having a conversation about expectations versus reality. I don't understand. Sarah posted that photo because she was ashamed to show people what the ring actually looks like. She's been hiding our engagement for 3 days because she thinks the ring I chose makes me look cheap. Oh God, Jessica breathed. Mike, I'm sure that's not. Her family wants me to return it and finance a $12,000 solitaire instead. You know, something more appropriate for a serious relationship. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, $12,000. Yep. About 3 times what I can actually afford, but apparently my budget reflects poorly on my commitment level. Emma grabbed for the phone, but I stepped back. This conversation was going to happen whether she wanted it to or not. Jessica, I continued, when you see Sarah tomorrow, ask to see the real ring. No filters, just natural lighting. Then you can decide for yourself whether I'm a cheap asshole or whether your friend has unrealistic expectations about what love should cost. Mike, Sarah finally found her voice. Tell her about Marcus at Blackwell Antiques and how pieces like this end up at Sotheby's auctions. Tell her about the provenance documentation and the Salon Stone certification. Tell her about the 3 months I spent learning about Art Deco jewelry because I wanted to surprise you with something as unique as you are. I handed the phone back to Sarah, who was staring at me like I'd just set her entire life on fire. Or don't tell her any of that, I said quietly. Keep the filter story going, pretend everything's fine, and hope nobody notices the discrepancy. Sarah took the phone with trembling hands. Jess. I have to call you back. She hung up without waiting for a response, then immediately turned off her phone entirely. The Instagram notifications, the calls, the texts, all of it went silent with that single gesture. There, I said. Problem solved. No more uncomfortable questions about your embarrassing engagement ring. The silence after Sarah turned off her phone felt like the eye of a hurricane, deceptively calm before the real destruction hit. Linda was still on her own phone, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to what I assumed was Sarah's father. Emma had stopped texting and was now staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You realize what you just did, right? Emma said, her voice barely controlled. Jessica's going to tell everyone. By tomorrow, half your friend group is going to know your engagement is falling apart. Good, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Maybe some honesty will do us all some good. Sarah looked up at me through red-rimmed eyes. You're trying to humiliate me. I'm trying to save us both from a marriage built on lies and resentment. I sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. Sarah, we've been lying to everyone for 3 days. You lied on Instagram, I lied to myself about being okay with your reaction, and we're both lying about this being fixable. Linda finished her call and turned to face us, her expression grim. Sarah's father wants to speak with you, Michael. Tonight. I almost laughed. Of course he does. Let me guess, he wants to have a man-to-man conversation about my financial responsibilities. He wants to understand your intentions toward his daughter. My intentions? I stood up, pacing again because sitting still felt impossible. I intended to marry her, Linda. Past tense. I intended to spend my life with someone who valued thoughtfulness over price tags. Emma's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and went pale. David's asking questions. He wants to know why Jake is telling people you might call off the engagement. The dominoes were falling faster now. Jake had clearly wasted no time spreading the word through our college friend group, and David, with his corporate lawyer instincts, was probably already calculating the social and financial implications. What did you tell David about the ring? I asked Emma directly. I told him it was vintage and unique. Did you tell him it was a sapphire? She hesitated. No. Did you tell him it cost $4,000? Mike, that's not really his business. But my earning potential is Sarah's business. My career choices are your family's business. My savings account balance is apparently everyone's business except mine. Sarah finally spoke up, her voice hoarse from crying. Stop making this about everyone else. This is about us. Is it? Because 20 minutes ago your mother was lecturing me about financial planning, and your sister was giving me career advice, and now your father wants a conference call about my intentions. I gestured around the room. When exactly does this become about what we want instead of what your family expects? Linda crossed her arms. Michael, families have opinions about their children's choices. That's normal. Normal families have opinions. Your family has demands. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my recent calls. You know what? Let's call your dad right now. Let's have this conversation. Sarah shot up from the couch. Mike, no. Why not? I've got nothing left to lose here. I hit the callback button for Linda's phone. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Linda. Is everything sorted out? Hi Mr. Chen, this is Mike. The pause that followed could have powered a small city. Mike. I was hoping to speak with you privately. Well, here I am. What did you want to discuss about my intentions toward your daughter? Emma was making frantic hand gestures, but I was committed to this path of scorched earth honesty. Son, Linda tells me there's some confusion about the engagement ring situation. No confusion, sir. Your daughter is embarrassed by the ring I chose because it doesn't look expensive enough. Your wife suggested I finance a replacement that costs 3 times my monthly salary. Pretty straightforward situation. The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, how much did you spend on this ring, Mike? $4,200. Every penny of my savings, plus overtime pay for 3 months. And Sarah thinks that's insufficient. I looked at Sarah, who was shaking her head desperately. Why don't you ask her yourself? I walked over and put the phone on speaker, setting it on the coffee table between us. Sarah, her father's voice filled the room. Is this true? Sarah stared at the phone like it was a venomous snake. Daddy, it's complicated. It's a simple question, sweetheart. Did Mike spend $4,000 on your engagement ring? Yes, but. And you're unhappy with it? The question hung in the air like an accusation. I watched Sarah's face cycle through emotions as she realized her father, the man who'd supposedly set the standard for engagement ring spending, was about to weigh in on her behavior. The ring is beautiful, she said carefully. It's just not what I expected. What did you expect? Emma shot me a look that could have melted steel, clearly realizing this conversation was about to expose some uncomfortable family dynamics. Something more traditional, Sarah whispered. More traditional, or more expensive? The question hit like a physical blow. Sarah's face crumpled as her father, inadvertently or not, cut straight to the heart of the matter. I wanted something that felt right for forever. And $4,000 doesn't feel like forever. I found myself holding my breath, waiting for her answer. Daddy, you don't understand, Sarah said, her voice cracking. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? Mr. Chen's voice carried that particular tone of disappointment that only fathers can master. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're telling a young man who spent his entire savings on you that his best effort isn't good enough. Linda's face had gone ashen. She clearly hadn't expected her husband to take this angle. Richard, Linda interjected, leaning toward the phone, you haven't seen the ring. It doesn't look like what people expect. Linda, I bought you a sapphire for our first anniversary. You wore it for 15 years until the setting wore out. His voice got sharper. Are you telling me that wasn't good enough either? The room went dead silent. Emma's mouth fell open, apparently this was family history she'd never heard. That was different, Linda said quickly. That was an anniversary gift, not an engagement ring. Different how? Because other people could see it. Because your friends had opinions. I watched this family drama unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. Sarah was staring at the phone like her entire worldview was reshaping itself in real time. Richard, please, Linda's voice was strained. This isn't about our marriage. Isn't it? Because it sounds like you're teaching our daughter that love is measured in carats. There was a long pause. Mike, you still there, son? Yes, sir. This ring you bought, is it quality? Good stone, good setting. Museum quality, according to the appraiser. Ceylon sapphire, platinum setting from 1923. The documentation traces back to the original Boston family who commissioned it. And you chose it because? I glanced at Sarah, who was watching me with desperate eyes. Because Sarah loves vintage jewelry. Because she values craftsmanship and history. Because I thought she'd appreciate something unique instead of something predictable. Another long pause. Sarah, your mother says you posted about the engagement on Instagram. Sarah's face went white. Just a quick announcement. With a picture of the ring? Yes, she whispered. But you used a filter to change how it looked? The question landed like a bomb. Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. Linda looked like she wanted to crawl under the furniture, and Sarah herself seemed to shrink into the couch cushions. How did you? Sarah started. Because your cousin Jenny called me 20 minutes ago, excited about your engagement. She asked if she could see the ring at Sunday dinner, and when I said I hadn't seen it yet, she offered to show me the photo. Then she mentioned it looked different in person when she saw Emma's friend wear a similar vintage piece last month. The family web was unraveling in real time. Jenny had apparently done some detective work that exposed the filter deception to Sarah's extended family before we'd even finished this conversation. So let me understand this, Mr. Chen continued, his voice getting colder. Mike spent 3 months researching and $4,000 buying you a ring that reflects your interests. You were so ashamed of it that you altered the photo before sharing it with friends. And now you want him to go into debt to buy you something more impressive? Daddy, Sarah tried to interrupt. Is that an accurate summary? The silence stretched until I thought the call had dropped. Sarah was crying again, but these were different tears, shame and recognition rather than anger and frustration. Answer me, Sarah. Yes, she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Then you owe Mike an apology, and your mother and I need to have a serious conversation about the values we apparently failed to teach you. The line went dead. The silence after Mr. Chen hung up felt like a physical presence in the room. Sarah sat frozen on the couch, staring at the phone like it might ring again with a reprieve from her father's judgment. Linda's face had gone through about 6 different shades of pale, while Emma kept checking her own phone with increasing anxiety. Well, I said finally, my voice hoarse from the emotional marathon we'd just run. That went about as well as expected. Sarah looked up at me with hollow eyes. He's never talked to me like that before. Ever. Maybe he should have, I replied, immediately regretting the harshness. But the words were already out there, hanging in the air like another small cruelty in a night full of them. Linda suddenly sprang into action, her real estate crisis management training kicking in. Okay, we need to control this narrative before it spirals completely out of control. Sarah, you need to call your father back and explain. Explain what? I interrupted. That everything he just said was accurate. Michael, you're not helping. I'm not trying to help anymore, Linda. I'm trying to end this cleanly before it gets worse. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Danny. Jake called me. What the hell is going on? Are you really breaking up with Sarah over a ring? Then another from my sister Kate. Danny said you and Sarah are having problems. Call me. Now. The family notification tree was spreading on both sides now. Within an hour, both sets of parents would be involved, along with siblings, cousins, and probably half our wedding guest list. Emma's phone rang, David's name flashing on the screen. She looked around the room like she was asking permission to answer, then stepped into the hallway. Sarah, I said quietly, sitting back down across from her. We need to talk about next steps. Practically speaking. She nodded miserably. The ring? I'll return it tomorrow. Blackwell closes at 6, so I can get there after work. And then what? I stared at her, this woman I'd planned to marry exactly 1 week ago. She looked smaller somehow, like the last few hours had physically diminished her. The Instagram ready confidence was gone, replaced by something rawer and more real. Then we figure out how to tell people the engagement is off. Linda shot up from her chair. Michael, you're both exhausted and emotional. Don't make permanent decisions when you're upset. I'm not upset anymore, Linda. I'm clear. I pulled out the ring box one final time, setting it on the coffee table between us. This isn't about being angry or hurt. This is about accepting that we want different lives. Sarah reached for the box, then stopped herself. Can I hold it one more time? I nodded, watching as she opened it with trembling fingers. The sapphire caught the lamplight, throwing blue fire across her palm. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman who dragged me through 5 antique shops last month, explaining the difference between Art Nouveau and Art Deco settings with genuine passion. It really is beautiful, she whispered. I know. And I really did love it. For about 10 minutes, before I started thinking about everyone else's reactions. Emma returned from the hallway, her face grim. David's coming over. He's bringing Chinese food and wants to mediate this situation. She used air quotes around the word mediate, clearly as thrilled about David's intervention as I was. Great, I muttered. A corporate lawyer who thinks 2 months' salary is a normal ring budget is exactly what this conversation needs. Sarah closed the ring box with a soft click. Maybe David's right. Maybe we just need someone objective to help us think through this rationally. I looked at her in amazement. Sarah, your father just hung up on us after explaining exactly how irrational this whole situation is. What more objectivity do you need? But I could see it in her eyes, she was still looking for a way to make this work, still hoping someone could engineer a compromise that would let her keep both me and her upgraded expectations. The ring drama had forced some uncomfortable truths into the light, but she wasn't ready to accept them yet. My phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. The cavalry keeps arriving, I said, declining the call. This is going to be a very long night. David arrived 37 minutes later with enough Chinese food to feed a small army and the insufferable confidence of someone who'd never had his credit application rejected. He set the bags on my kitchen counter like he was claiming territory, then surveyed the room with the calculating gaze of a man accustomed to billable hours and negotiated settlements. All right, he announced, loosening his tie. I've heard bits and pieces from everyone, but let's start fresh. What exactly are we trying to solve here? Emma immediately launched into damage control mode, explaining the ring's situation while carefully omitting the financial details and her family's role in escalating everything. David nodded along, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed he still thought this was a simple communication problem. So Mike, he said finally, turning to me with that practiced lawyer smile, help me understand your position. Sarah's expressed that she'd prefer a different style ring, and you're resistant to that? The reframing was masterful. Suddenly I was the unreasonable one refusing a simple style preference rather than someone being asked to triple their debt for social media optics. David, I said slowly, how much did Emma's ring cost? Emma shot me a warning look, but David shrugged. 32,000. 2 months' salary, like the traditional guideline suggests. And if you made my salary, 42,000 annually, would you have spent the same percentage? David's lawyer brain immediately started calculating. 2 months of my salary would be about $7,000. His face shifted as he realized where this was heading. That's not really the same situation. Why not? Because percentage-based spending only applies to people who make enough for the percentages to work out conveniently. Sarah was watching this exchange with growing horror, probably realizing that David's mediation wasn't going to magically solve the fundamental math problem. Look, David continued, regrouping quickly, money isn't everything. The important thing is that you love each other. Can't you find some middle ground? What middle ground? I pulled out my phone and opened the calculator again. Sarah wants a $12,800 ring. I spent $4,200. The middle ground would be about $8,500. Know any jewelers selling engagement rings for $8,500, David? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Emma was studiously avoiding eye contact, Linda was checking her own phone, and Sarah was staring at the Chinese food containers like they held answers to life's mysteries. Maybe financing isn't such a bad option, David suggested weakly. Lots of couples make sacrifices for important purchases. David. I stood up, suddenly clear about what needed to happen. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. I walked to the kitchen and picked up the ring box one final time, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. 3 days ago, I proposed to the woman I loved with a ring that represented months of research, my entire savings, and everything I understood about who she was as a person. Tonight, I've learned that my understanding was completely wrong. I turned back to face them all, Sarah with her tear-stained face, Emma clutching her own massive solitaire, Linda calculating her next move, and David preparing his closing argument. Sarah doesn't want to marry me. She wants to marry the version of me that can afford her dreams. And honestly, I don't want to marry someone who's ashamed to wear my best effort. I set the ring box on the coffee table with finality. So we're done. No mediation, no compromise, no payment plans. Tomorrow I'll return this ring, get my $4,200 back, and we'll both find people who actually want the lives we can offer. Sarah started crying again, but they were different tears now, recognition tears, the kind that come when you finally stop fighting reality. The engagement is off, I said quietly. And that's why everyone hates the ring I chose.